Noah, thank you so much for joining us on Metrics and Chill. Excited to have you on. Like we talked about before I pressed record. AJ's been on the show from demandDrive. You came highly recommended, and this is a super top of mind topic for us right now at Databox. So I'm looking forward to diving into how you guys have overhauled and improved your lifecycle function. Um, so maybe let's start here. It sounds like what you laid out, and tell me if you think this is like an accurate framing for what you did. And if not, feel free to correct. Um, so you basically, what you did recently was you looked at adding or maybe enhancing like the way you were tracking what you call like micro interactions users take, and that each micro action becomes this data point that then eventually fuels more precise targeting, personalization, allows you to like get more business results as a result. Is that sort of like a high level way that you frame it, or like is there a better way to
Yeah,
summarize that?
demandDrive became acquired by a private equity firm where three companies became one.
Okay.
And through that, we learned that each company was doing things a little bit differently. And through each company, each sales rep. So sales reps were some were doing a really good job inside the CRM, logging meetings, calls, notes, etc. Some were pen and paper. So the ability to actually take each interaction and quite literally every email sent is not just for creating reports, but also just the visibility from management to see when they take over a lead or take over an opportunity, each touch point that happened along the way to get them to that like MQL, SQL opportunity stage proved to be super valuable.
Okay. Awesome. Um, let's start here. Like, other than the merger of, three businesses coming together, which obviously is a huge driver for this, were there any other major drivers for the initiative? Like, specifically, I'm curious about the tracking these micro interactions. Like, was there anything going wrong that was like, oh man, we needed to improve this? Like, we don't, did you feel like we weren't getting the accuracy or the ability to segment down or have relevant messaging? Like, what were some of the drivers for you that made you want to undertake the project?
Yeah, first we had a hard time understanding how long and how many times it took for us to basically turn a contact into a lead or a lead into an opportunity. We had no idea. We had no idea in terms of forecasting, and because we had no idea, um, we had no ideas on how to enhance that process. So let me give you an example. Um, One of the teams would, in terms of like prospecting, they would go to companies' websites and physically find people on those websites, and then physically look up their LinkedIn profiles, trying to get their emails and phone numbers, etc. And this could take a really, really long time. And as we began to track how long that actually took, we were like, okay, this creates an opportunity for us to optimize that process, which led us to integrating other tools into our CRM like Play, which is a data enrichment tool, to help speed up that process. So we can, especially with the rise of AI and everything, we can say, hey, Clay, go to these companies' websites, go find the phone numbers of these people. Let's enrich that data, bring it into our CRM, and let's take a lot of that time outside of this away from the sales team and see if we can lower that overall uh, amount of time to become a lead. And we would have never known that if we didn't start tracking like how many emails it took, how many meetings, how many days did it actually take for somebody to reach out in close an opportunity.
What did the process look like? Like, how did you start tracking these things? Like, did you feel like this was an effort of just trying to track every single touch point you could and then see what of it correlated to like higher bookings rates and things like that? Or was it more like, um, you knew, like, you went in with a list of like data points that you were currently not tracking? Like, how did you actually come up with a list of which micro interactions to track?
As honestly as much as we could. And
Yeah.
that goes to both the user contact side, if they've come to our website, what source they came to our website on, etc., to the sales reps, just in creating processes for sales reps to track emails, meetings, calls. But even taking that a step further is kind of locking down the process, ensuring these reps stay in their lane of as they move across the funnel, like think of a deal stage or a lead pipeline, not allowing them to skip stages as they move from one stage to the next, requiring them to put in information, literally not allowing them to move to that next stage, not allowing them to move backwards, because when you move backwards, it's going to mess up our funnel reporting, because now you're seeing a lead move backwards and forwards, and we're not going to be able to see that entire picture. So it's tracking micro interactions, but also kind of forcing the hand to make them track these things.
Got it. Okay. And then what did you do? Like, so once you're tracking these things and you're progressing with everything, what did you actually do to, like, I'm just imagining, like, now you've got all this extra data, you're enriching things, you're capturing all this stuff. What were some of like the next steps that you took that you feel like you'd recommend other people that are listening to do? Like, once you've got the data points connected, what were some of the action items that came away from this?
Oh, super cool. So with better data, we're able to do better segmentation within the CRM. That can be just like lists, or based off company size, or how many times somebody's reached out to somebody. So we get really, really good segmentation. And because of that, we're able to create highly specific, personalized outreach to these people based off that segmentation. Or we'll assign groups of users to different sales reps based off their own strengths. Because one thing we're doing inside the CRM is we are lumping reps into specific categories based off what they're really good at. Some people can be really good at SMB, and some people can be really good at enterprise. That's a really basic level of segmentation. But some people may be good at re-engagement. If you've been reaching out for a lead for months and we're not getting in contact with them, maybe we switch it up and we send it to Jeremiah, because Jeremiah is very good at re-engaging. So the better data leads to better segmentation, which honestly leads to personalization in the way we actually reach out to people.
What do you feel like? I'd be really curious just to know, like, were there any that were especially impactful that you saw right away? Like, oh yeah, segmenting by this element, or like personalizing based on this element was especially impactful for us.
We started to leverage these like micro interactions and into creating a lead score. And I see lead score as kind of two things. There's how engaged is the contact or lead with your company? Are they responding to your emails? Are they booking meetings? Are they going to your website? That's one score. The other score is how fit is their company or person to be a client of yours? That's another score. That can be based off of like annual revenue, or how many employees are at the company. Again, the SMB enterprise, and taking these two scores together to create an overall like lead score to then influence not just how we reach out to people, but also how we market to people. We can take those lists of leads, put them into Facebook, take lookalike audiences, or remarketing campaigns, etc.
Yeah. What does it look like from a personalization standpoint? Like, did it change? Like, I'm just thinking, like, is the end result of the messaging or like the sales flow that you run them through, like, how does that look different as a result based on all of this?
Oh, yeah, 100%. If we know somebody's super engaged with us and actually responding, you'd want to communicate to them quite differently than somebody who hasn't engaged with us for months. So by us kind of putting people into these buckets and doing really good, meaningful segmentation, we'll route them down different sequences or automated email flows to hopefully just to get them to engage, move their score slightly up, and hopefully move them down a different flow.
Got it. What does it look like for you from that standpoint? Like, do you think about when it comes to progressing them through the funnel, like, how are you like, what are the stages that you're sort of tracking, and how are you defining each of those metrics? Like, do you use the typical like MQL, SQL, SQO? Like, how do you think about that, and how has sort of tracking these micro interactions maybe changed some of that for you?
Yeah, we do take the standard approach. It goes from our, at least in HubSpot, I know it's kind of the opposite in Salesforce, but we go from our contact to a lead,
Okay.
to a sales accepted lead, which is essentially an opportunity to close one. But I think in between all those stages, for example, when somebody is a lead, where are they at in that process of becoming of that outreach? Are they a new lead? Are you attempting to contact them? Are you connected with them? Are you going back and forth for a while and you aren't exactly sure if they're qualified enough to create an opportunity yet? So creating our own mini pipelines in between those life cycle stages becomes super important from data, but also just if you look at a reps day-to-day work, for them to understand and look at hundreds of leads and be able to say, okay, these leads are in this step of the broader pipeline, if that makes sense.
What metrics are you tracking to sort of validate that lifecycle stage progression's healthy? How often do you audit or adjust that process?
Well, I'd say it's two things. One, I think it's obviously the contact to overall close rate, but really you got to look at every step of the funnel. What is the percentage of people that go from contact to lead, percentage of people that go from lead to MQL, or the percentage of people that go from lead to we've connected with this lead. That's like a really important piece of micro interactions, is like understanding at what points we actually get to connect to people. How many times do we have to reach out to them in order to get them to respond, or to have a meaningful response? And then the other piece of that is the probability. Because once you understand the probability that someone's gonna move through the funnel, become an opportunity, or move across the stages in the deal pipeline, that we're able to do much more accurate forecasting. So we are changing that a lot, because we've had this implemented for a year and a half, 2 years, and through that time we have much more data. And when you have that much more data, we're able to more accurately predict our probabilities. And now something we're actually doing is, on every stage we're going back to require reps to put in a deal probability, because when you do that, we're getting an accurate representation of the person who's talking to the lead. How much do they think, how likely is it that they think the lead is actually going to convert? Now we have good forecasting.
Got it. And what, out of curiosity, like, that's something we're actually in the middle of researching right now with our existing customers, is like, what does forecasting look like for you all at demandDrive? Like, what is it? Is this something that you're doing just like month by month or quarter by quarter? Like, is this only for sales? Is this also for marketing? Like, is this for overall company goals? Just be curious to dig more into how this has impacted your forecasting process.
For us, it's month over month, and that it's tough because that number changes as more leads come up, and the close date on those leads change, to how much we forecast changes. But it's important for us to understand how much business we're going to close, because that's going to influence how many people or an agency we're going to need to work them once they do close. The other flip side of that is something we're in the middle of implementing, is individual reps submitting their own forecasts, so we can see what reps we think are behind the 8 ball or above the 8 ball. Can we support reps that are behind it, or should we push more leads to them, or are they not getting enough leads? So there's like 2 levels of forecasting that we've been playing around with.
I've got a couple questions that I want to try and get at for listeners who like want to undertake this process. I'm not sure that I'm like going to word them the perfect way, but
Okay.
But like, one thing that comes to mind is, okay, if a company wants to begin doing this and they feel like they're not doing it and they want to start to do these micro interactions, it feels like it would be the easy part. In some ways, you might tell me it's opposite. Obviously, like, you as the RevOps expert might tell me the opposite, but like, it seems like in a lot of ways, it could be like the easier part is just starting to enrich all the data. Okay, so now we're, like, we've turned these things on, we've set up these tools and these automations, and now we're capturing all these data points. But how to know what of it is actually actionable, where I think like a lot of people, especially at growing companies, going from one phase to the next, just sort of feel like maybe analysis paralysis. Like, okay, we start capturing all these micro interactions, now it's here, but who's supposed to be figuring out like what of it is relevant and what of it, like prioritizing what's the most actionable? How did you think about doing that? Like, what did it start with, just a couple at a time and you added as you went on? Did you gather feedback from sales or from marketing? Like, I'd be really curious how you tackled that and what advice you might have for others.
Tough. Definitely a tough question. I worked a lot starting with our C-level suite and kind of creating dashboards that are specific for them. and what do they need to be able to run their day to day, their week to week, their month to month. Those are like the bigger picture. How much have we closed? How much are we forecasting? Then working with reps. What does a rep need in terms of their dashboard to successfully like manage their day? And and when you look at like what they need and then maybe what their managers need and what the C-level suite needs, you start to see there's gaps in what we're doing. You start to see, okay, the C-level suite needs forecasting, but the reps aren't putting in deal probabilities. And why aren't the reps putting in deal probabilities? Maybe because they've been swamped maybe because they've taken handwritten notes. They've been swamped in the amount of information that they have to input. So I think talking to each team individually becomes super important because those teams ultimately all tie together to hopefully the same goal, which is to close more business. And I think when we talk with the sales teams, letting them know that this isn't so much of a, hey, we're watching you type of thing. This is more of a, we're trying to help you be more efficient. We're trying to help you close more deals. And the more data we can get, the better we're going to be able to automate, use AI, support you in your day to day, which ultimately supports management and then the C-suite.
So would you say, like, for people who want to do the same, a good starting point is like work C-level down, like go to C-level and say, okay, what do you need? Or like executive level, like what insights about the business are you looking for? What do you want your dashboards or KPIs or reports to show? And then it goes to, okay, what are we lacking in order to show that? Like what micro interactions are we missing to capture in order to give accurate information for that? And then you're working down to like, okay, we capture that at the team and then individual contributor level.
Absolutely. Start with the bigger picture, understanding the bigger picture. You can't even get to the bigger picture of how much we're closing, how much we're forecasting. I don't think we can go much deeper than that.
Totally.
Or if we can't even get there, then we have to start digging deeper with the management and say, hey, what's going on with this team? Why are we not able to track these things, or what issues are we facing on a day to day for you and the reps to just get through the day, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How much of it was, I'm curious of two angles from your perspective, like how much of it was the micro interactions were not being tracked just because of there were no processes in place, but like the tooling was there. It could have been done like all this time. And how much of it was like you actually needed new tooling and you actually needed to purchase, like set up some new instances for this?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I'd say a lot of it, the tools had been in place, but the training hadn't been there, or we hadn't fully integrated HubSpot. The tools are all there. That's like pieces of the micro interaction, but then like optimizing their day to day and understanding like how can we help them, like support them in creating these micro interactions, like emails, like how can we get them to email more people in a day, or book more meetings, and that comes through new tools, like I mentioned Clay before, or automation and maybe leveraging something like Zapier to connect to, in Slack. You know, maybe there are sales reps that are quite literally missing leads coming in because they're missing notifications from HubSpot. How can we push these notifications to other places so they see them, or how can we notify their managers if they miss them? Um, so yeah.
Okay. What were some of the difficulties when you went about setting this up? Like for people looking to do the same, what were maybe some of the hardest parts of it that surprised you or
Yeah.
that you feel like listeners should be aware of?
People don't like to change. You're working with people that are out of college to people that are deep into their career. And through that, there's a ton of varying like technical ability. And through that, people have been using the tools they like for a really long time. And over the last couple of years with AI and these tools becoming much more sophisticated and hopefully easier, it also requires you to change the way you think and the way you work. So people have been doing it one way, and we're constantly pushing people to do it a new way. And they're not going to like it at first. And sometimes people don't like it ever, but hopefully it'll make their jobs more efficient, and their jobs more efficient, our job from like the data side better to analyze, because if we get good data, again, we're able to hopefully continue to help them. So hopefully it's a never ending circle of we're optimizing, we're getting better data, we're optimizing, we're getting better data.
what do you think as like a high level summary were some of the biggest wins you walked away with, and maybe what are some you're still looking to get out of the data? Like, so you mentioned forecasting was like a major level up, it sounds like. What were a couple other like major levels up? And then what are some that you think maybe are coming down the road yet from this data?
Yeah, I think marketing and sales alignment is a really big one. If we know what lead sources and types of leads our sales team wants to work, that can influence our ad spend, where the types of campaigns we run. And I go back to the personalization, our ability to talk to these people in a way that's specific to them. We're not just uh, and we're still trying to improve this, but we're not just sending the same email out to every single person. Hopefully that we can leverage enrichment tools to see what companies recently are hiring or recently have got funding, and that can influence how we speak to them. We say, hey, we know you're hiring for this. We sell SDR services, et cetera. So um, that's kind of answering both. We've made a lot of progress in the segmentation, the personalization component, and I think there's a lot more we can do to continue to get better at it. And honestly, just pushing each person and putting in I call them checks and balances, to kind of force people's hand to do things the right way, which isn't always as easy as it sounds. Um, to make sure we get that good data.
Yeah. I'm curious, how has, like you mentioned, you're working really closely with these teams. It sounds like you're syncing with executives, you're syncing with sales team leaders, you're syncing with marketing team. Like, what role did their feedback play in maybe how you refined or shaped the process? Were there things that like you went in with a plan, but then based on their feedback, like you had to tweak it, or like they're like, no, this is like super, like a lot of friction for us or really difficult. Like we want to go this other way with it.
Yeah, when you talk to so many people, people have a lot of like
Sure.
contradicting feedback, and especially when you're working with the C-level suite who want things a very specific way, they may not understand how this can actually impact like the reps day to day in a positive or a negative way. So you kind of have to teeter the boundaries a little when you're working with each team. So I think it's a communication thing. The communicating with each team, what's possible, what's not possible. And for us, we merged 3 brands underneath like one HubSpot portal. And some things you do can impact all 3 companies, and some things you do can just be done for you. So I think that originally creating like team partitioning in user views, so like controlling what people can and cannot see, so they don't. Because if you look in my portal as an admin, you would be overwhelmed with, because you can see absolutely everything. But if you go into a sales rep's portal or the CEO's portal, we're controlling what they can see, because we don't want them to jump in and just be confused because there's so much data. And I thought that was a really big and important piece of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess my last question on this would be like, what other recommendations do you have for people that want to undertake the same? Like if a company is listening and they're like, we just feel they're in a similar spot, right? Like, I mean, I guess maybe not merging 3 brands together, that's somewhat unique, but like they're feeling maybe the same thing of like, we just don't feel like segmentation is as good. We feel like our personalization could improve. We're missing a lot of like low-hanging fruit. What are like recommendations you would give as they start to undertake the process?
I would start with building out a flow chart before you even begin touching the tool. Talking to each team again and mapping out what the process actually should look like. And that's the process starting of when do contacts get created in the system? Is it through a manual? Do they manually get created through prospecting? Are they submitting forms on your website? Are they through like referral partners or something like that? What happens then? Who gets notified? Does the manager get notified? How do we route that to a sales rep? Which sales rep? What is the first outreach? How do we want them to outreach? Where does the segmentation begin? Are we segmenting based off company size? Are we doing lead scoring? I think truly mapping it out in a flowchart. We use FigJam. I think it's amazing. But mapping it out, so then you can go to each team and say, here is the actual process. And you kind of get the feedback from every team on like the full process. You take all that feedback and continue to iterate until the idea is to have every team agree on how the flow of information should work. once every team agrees on the flow of information, then we start building. So I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, that's an amazing, like, helpful, practical piece of advice. I guess I do have, it made me think of one more question, which is when you went to the teams, like you're saying, you start kind of from the top down, and you're learning like what does the executives want, what do teams leader want, like how much of that, like, were they coming knowing exactly what they wanted, and how much did maybe you sort of guide the process? Like, I would just be curious, like how much people, sales leaders down to individual contributors or like C-suite, like know exactly what they want and you're just delivering, and how much were you like guiding the process of what's possible, what's not possible, maybe supplementing and giving more guidance on that?
Yeah. They know, and this is every team, this isn't just like the C-level suite, they know their day-to-day. So C-level suite's going to be talking, I need to know how much we're closing next month. I need to know how much we've closed last month and last quarter. I'd say you have to go in with a lot of questions, and I say, hey, do you have any idea how you want to be prioritizing routing reps? We're routing leads to different reps. And then you're going to start to spark opinions from them. And that might be something they've never thought about, but at least they'll have like somewhat of opinion for it. Now I go down the chain, and I go, hey, sales manager, this is what the C-level suite said on like their opinion on routing reps. How does that make, like, how do you feel about that routing? Does that make sense to you? And then going to the reps, that might not be the best example for going to the reps because they're getting the lead, but understanding, are they actually getting enough leads, and honestly, are they happy with the process? I think including reps in the process is super important for them to feel the love and feel the control of how the system works.
Awesome. Noah, this has been really awesome. Thank you for walking us through how you're leveraging data in this way. This is, like I said, timely and interesting for us because we're in the process of standing up a lifecycle function at Databox. Is there any, like, where can people go to sort of follow or learn more from you? Are you publishing anywhere right now? And then where can they go to learn more about demandDrive?
Definitely follow me on LinkedIn. It's just at Noah Burkholz. demandDrive, we just rebuilt our website. We're posting blog articles all the time.
It looks awesome, by the way. I was going to say, did you guys do a refresh because it's like a new logo and stuff like that?
Yeah,
since I've last seen it.
Complete refresh, new brand, new logo, new everything. It's awesome. We're posting blog. We're making a big initiative and pushing internally to be pushing out blog articles. We have our own podcast that we'll occasionally push to, which is just a bunch of, we talk about a lot of just topics that are coming up across the agency, not just CRM data related, but web design, web dev, sales functions, CRM marketing, etc. So follow us just on our website, subscribe to our newsletter, and you'll stay up to date.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
Bye.